Uh, Hello, everyone. Tilisma is starting podcast named Book, the Broad from Far Books, aka BFF Books. Today, our guest will be famous Georgian writer Dato Turashvili, who is a very well-known man in Georgia. He published a lot of books, and as you know, Tilisma is a Georgian company that produces and creates wooden accessories for book lovers. And we decided to start a podcast about the authors and the books that are not that deserve even more attention in English-speaking world. We find this book very interesting in Georgia. It was translated in English language, and today we will discuss with a writer the topics that you, our followers of Tilisma, our bookworm friends, have sent your list of questions. So let's start. Thank you, Dato, for joining us. I will have some questions for you, and also I will ask some questions from our followers. At first, let's talk about your book, Flight from the USSR. It's best-selling book in Georgia. And please tell us a little story about it. When you write it, what was the main ideas you had while writing it? What's the problems? And when you have decided to translate it in English, and what was the reaction of first Georgian public and the public abroad? Thank you once again, please.
Thank you very much. I'm happy if you are so interested in this book, and this book is translated into 22 or 21 languages and is published in so many countries. And among them is Canada, so the huge country, so far from so small Georgia. But I think that books, they don't have borders. That's why any book, if the readers like it, so can travel everywhere in the world. So thanks so much for the first question, because always a lot of readers, they are interested in how it was born. It was born, this book, every book has its biography. And this book was born because of the story, because maybe this is a book of this is a mix of documentary and the fiction, but really is based on a true story which happened in the Soviet time in 1983, when Georgia, small Georgia, not American Georgia, was part of the Soviet Union. And there was a group of young people, very famous and popular at that time. Among them was a leader of the group, very famous, young, but really very good film actor, and they tried to hijack a plane from the Soviet Georgia. So they could not do it, and the 1 year later they were arrested that day, and they were executed. So I think that the idea of this book comes from the Soviet regime, because I was young, but I remember that the information we had from the official TV company, there was only one. And also, it was the Soviet Union, and there were no independent TV companies or independent newspapers. So the official version of this hijacking was not enough for me. So I always wanted to know more, but it was impossible, because the Soviet Union was a very isolated country. So and the regime means not to have information. So I started thinking. I remember I was young, but I started thinking about the plane, what was happening inside the plane, and I started thinking about the generation. So I was younger, and personally I did not know them, but I was thinking. I remember, if I were their friend, if I knew they were going to hijack a plane, could I join them, or did I join them, or and so on and so on. So I had so many questions, but without answers, without a response. So I think that's why I wrote this book. But there is a huge difference, by the way. So I have been to many countries because of this book, and there were so many questions, and there are so many questions till now. But there is a difference, because when they published this, first of all, they changed the title in a Georgian version. The title of this book is Genes Generation. So. But in the Netherlands, in Canada, in West Germany, in France, other countries, they did not know, and they don't know what does it mean, gene generation. They changed the title of the book. Of course, they asked me with my permission, but they did it. They changed it because for the readers, for the citizens of ex-Soviet countries, it was very easy to understand what does genes generation mean and why genes was so unusual in the Soviet time. But I remember when I was a kid, it was the main dream of any of us to have the real American genes. You could not. It was not so easy to find the real American genes. I remember once I asked my grandmother, where can I buy jeans, American jeans? And she said in Lviv. Lviv is, in Ukraine. It's the border between Ukraine and Poland. So, that time in Tbilisi, for foreigners, it's not easy to believe. It's a little bit unbelievable, but in Tbilisi, in the capital of Georgia, where I was born and was growing up, I remember all of them, all guys, they were wearing real American jeans. So that's why the title of the book comes from reality, the Soviet reality. But then they changed it, that's why you saw the if you have read this book,
Sure.
in Canada, they changed. For example, the title is different. The flight from the USSR, not Genes Generation, because Canadians, they did not have the problems with the buying jeans like in the Soviet Georgia or in all other Soviet countries. And so this is, I think this is the main reasons why I wrote this book. If it's clear what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it was a very interesting topic. And as I mentioned, one of our followers, we have sent 10 books to our followers who are ready to read it and share their opinions. And one question was about the name. What was the reason behind the name? They did not know that you have changed it, but they were like interesting. Was it problem for people to leave the USSR? As we know, I was also born in Soviet Union. I spent only a few months, but I knew that the biggest problem in the USSR was that you could not leave it. So I will read one question from our follower, Jessica. His question is following. The book touches on themes of freedom, oppression, and desperation. How do you think those themes resonate with readers today, especially outside of Georgia or the former Soviet Union? So your book is in English, and as you mentioned, it was translated in a lot of languages. People read it in Canada, in United States, in UK, and they're interested. What is your idea? What people could learn from it?
So in the beginning, first of all, I could say that when I started writing this book, so I was looking for the more details. So I wanted to know more, of course, about everyone and everything, what was happening in the plane or out the plane. And I discovered that it was the 45th case to hijack a plane from the Soviet Georgia. 45th case. And we did not know about it before the Soviet Union was collapsed, because it was, very isolated country, and everything was forbidden, even to get information, what was happening inside not only outside the Soviet Union, inside the Soviet Union. You could not know, and of course we did not know. But then after the Soviet Union was collapsed and Georgia became again the independent country, and after the restoration of the independence, I discovered that this case, what I wrote a book about, was 45th case to hijack a plane from the Soviet Union. So of course, I wrote a book many times in other countries. They ask me about who are the main characters. So heroes, like some readers, they see them as heroes. Some of them they think they were just terrorists. Of course, to hijack a plane is a crime, and of course it's not good, and of course they were guilty. And when I was writing this book, and was asking the members of their families, no one says, and nobody told me that they were not guilty. Of course they were guilty. To hijack a plane from the Soviet Union or from Canada or other countries is a crime. It's not a good idea. It doesn't matter what kind of idea you have, and of course freedom is really very sweet and important, but to hijack a plane where people die, so it's not good. But really, I wrote a book about the victims of the Soviet regime, because if not so the Soviet regime, they could travel everywhere they wanted to go. So it was not necessary to hijack a plane, to leave the Soviet Union. So that's why I think that I wrote a book about the victims, not about the heroes or about just terrorism or just about the heroes, but about victims of the Soviet regime, because not in other countries, also in Georgia, in my country, next generation, the generation of our kids, they don't know anything about the Soviet regime. And of course, they generally, grandparents or they remember from the past everything sweet and good. But really, it's easy you don't want to remember horrible things, and you forget it. You try to forget it, but I think that it's the history. You have to remind to the next generation what it was before, what the Soviet Union was like as a regime. So I think that's why I wrote a book. By the way, the book about the freedom, about the Soviet regime that because of the regime, you become a victim, like main characters of this book. They wanted just to escape from the country, and it was impossible. Officially, it was forbidden to leave the country. So if not, so they could take the ticket for the plane, and they could travel everywhere. But it did not happen. And this is very tragedy for me, because 5 years later, the Soviet Union, just 5 years later, the Soviet Union was collapsed, and they could survive, but it happened immediately after the so-called court. It was not trial; it was just show for other Soviet citizens, to show them that everyone who can think about the freedom will be next victim of the regime. So this is the true story, and the book is based on a true story. Yeah.
You have mentioned very interesting topics that in your book you try to tell the stories, the facts that happened in Georgia, and you don't try to be a judge or to find heroes or like fighters against the regime. So my question is about, was it hard to find the real documents, real stories, to talk with the family members of those who hijacked or those who were victims in the airplane? Can you tell us a little bit about the story of how we were working on this book, please?
Okay, thank you very much. So it was not easy, because this is a tragedy even now for a lot of people in Georgia, and talk about this sad story or tragical story. It was not good. And by the way, I wrote this book many years ago, but did not publish because I was not very sure it was good idea or not to remind, to talk about it again and again. But when it happened in 2008, when Russia attacked small Georgia again and started the last Russian-Georgian war before they did it in Ukraine, by the way, I decided to publish this book, and I asked to my Georgian publisher to do it. No, not before. Before I did really did, I have written this book before, but I was not sure. But then I said I decided after the war that you know, when they started bombing Tbilisi, the capital, for example, I decided to do it, and I did it. And before, I mean, of course, I remember a lot of people. They knew more about this hijacking. They knew personally the characters, main characters, and the mother, for example, of the main character, Gega Kobakhidze, really famous and really very good actor. He was very young, just 23 years old, and his mother helped me because she told so many interesting and very important things, and also the members of others, the members of the families, friends, and so on. Especially, I would like to thank Irakli Chanukuyani, the musician, who was very close friend of Gega Kobakhidze, very close friend. And by the way, he was very angry that Gega did not tell to his best friend that they were going to hijack a plane, and he was very angry why Gega did not do it, did not tell him. So he told me, and others also with the archives helped me. The daughter of a monk who was also arrested. He was not there. It's crazy, but it's true. Can you imagine the Soviet government and the regime was so cruel that they arrested the guy, the monk, who was not in a plane and was killed or was among them as a leader. He was
Yes.
not there. He did not hijack a plane because he was against of hijacking a plane, and for last year he did not. That monk did not have any relation with his friends because he did not like this idea. Can you imagine? But he also was arrested. That monk, Chikladze was his last name, and his daughter helped me with the archives, because after the Soviet Union was collapsed in the beginning of restoration, the Georgian independence, she asked the government of New Georgia, and they gave to Eka, her name is Eka, all archives about her father, who was really victim, and she helped me, and other people also, they helped me. So it was not easy for me, because you know, to talk about this tragedy with the people, they were very close friends, so it's not easy, but they did it, and they helped me, because for them it was important, you know, to write a book. When I was asking them, that's also, I decided to write a book. They were happy, really happy to help me, because my idea was just to remind to the next generation what kind of regime it was, the Soviet Union. And by the way, even now, so many years later, this book has so many readers, especially in Georgia, because as it was happening for last 200 years, again we are in the same situation. On 26th of October, we have a next election, new elections, and we have to make a choice again what to do: back to the USSR or to continue developing our country as an independent statement and as a part of free world generally. And so I think that this book is a popular. Sometimes I'm joking. It's a very popular when they ask me because it's very cheap, not big and cheap. But really, I think that because there are so many questions without answers, and even now, and that's why, and still we are very post-Soviet country. It's not easy. Officially we got independence. We have a declaration of independence. Officially we are different country. Officially we are independent country. But the problems, they come from the Soviet Union. This is mentality problems, and they still exist in Georgia. So I think I hope until 26th of October, and then we will really have another country, another society, and I hope so. Yeah, not the same. We are tired from this the Soviet influence. Yeah, and this influence exists in Georgia. Yeah? Even now, and even that's why even this book works. Even now, among a new generation, this book has so many readers. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, that's right. So you have talked about many things, and we had some questions for our followers regarding if the story was rooted on the real events and how much was your own interpretation. But you have talked about it. But we have a very good question from our follower, and I'll ask you with your permission. Here is it. Could you tell us whether the families of main characters liked the book or not? I'm sure that a lot of members of their families have read the book. What was their reaction? For example, the mother of Gegal Kobachidze, a very famous woman.
Thanks so much for the questions. What I can say about the first question that when I'm writing a book, of course I know and I knew. I have written many books, and every time, of course, I knew and I know what's the real things and what's the fiction. Where is the borders or a line between them? But after the book is finished, is written, these borders, they disappear. I don't know. I never have read my book, so of course I forget where is the fiction and where is the reality, and it depends to the reader as they see whether they see reality, real things. This is, I think that it's how to explain it. The readers must decide where is fiction and where is real life. This is literature. That's why literature is the most magic, how to say, phenomenon. How to say in English?
Yeah, phenomenon is good.
Yeah. And yeah, genes is has the second position, but the books first of all. The literature is really so magic that for me the borders disappear, and only readers can decide where is truth and where is the fiction. So I don't have answers. I can't answer this question. You understand? When I'm writing, I know where I am and what I'm talking about. But then it disappears, and my brave lives with the new ideas and next book, and the brave forgets. My brave forgets the books I have written before. You understand? It's maybe strange to explain. Maybe it's not easy for the readers to understand what do I mean. But it happens like this. So I can't say. I don't know. So if you think that this is not fiction but real story, so this is the real story. If readers decide like this, so they are right. And what can I say about the second question? Was about what
if
it was.
family members liked your book when they read it.
You see, I never ask my readers how do they like my books. Never. So I don't know, but but I don't know. Sorry, I'm so sorry, but I never asked.
Yeah,
Also,
understand it. It's not easy to ask, do you like my book or not?
yeah,
It's unusual question.
yeah, no.
Okay.
But generally writers do it. They write books not because to answer them the readers, future readers of this book, they will like it or no. No, they write books because this is their life. So this is is so important for the authors that they write books and nothing else. They don't think about the future readers who will understand how will they understand it and how will they like it or not. The authors don't think about it. No, I never ask them. Maybe in the future I will ask. I don't know. I have never asked, never. So I don't know. By the way, I forgot to tell you that when so first it was published, this book, in 2008, as I told you, and then immediately the foreigners, the publishing houses in other countries, they asked my Georgian publishers to translate into other languages and to publish in other countries. But there is a difference. You cannot find the chapter in a Georgian version. Doesn't exist. The special chapter I wrote for the Western auditorium, the special chapter, what kind of country it was, so cruel it was, how cruel it was, the Soviet regime and government, that the young people decided to hijack a plane for escaping from the Soviet Union. You understand? Because, for example, when they published it in Ukraine, in Poland, in other ex-Soviet countries, they did not have questions about the Soviet regime. They knew it, and they didn't have the questions like this. But in Netherlands, in Germany, in Canada, by the way, in Spain, in France, in other countries, they wanted to know more how it happened that the young people they loved life and they were so popular, famous, and so on, successful people suddenly decided to hijack a plane, and that's why I wrote a special chapter for them.
Yeah, I understand. It's a really important point for the people who don't know what life in Soviet Union was like. We have another question from our follower. It's very interesting. But before that, I would like to say a few words for the people who are watching our podcast but have not read your great book yet. So the book is, as the author have mentioned, about the young generation, like a group of people who wanted to leave Soviet Union. But as you know, Soviet Union was a state country with closed borders, and it was not allowed it without permission to live, especially in capitalist countries in the so-called free world. So those people decided to hijack the plane, and they were captured and they were executed. Except the wife of main character Gega, her name was Tina, who was in prison until the dissolution of Soviet Union. And the book tells us a story of the people who wanted to live because they wanted to find the liberty they did not have. So the question our follower just asked us on our live resonates this idea. So the question is for you, Dato. Do you see any parallels between the desires of the youth in the fight from the USSR and those of today's young generation? So do you see any parallel between those people and today's people? Especially these days, our young generation is very active. They started to be more political than before. They're searching for more freedom. So what's your opinion? Please share with us.
Thanks so much for this question. So we are talking now about the generation that was born in independent Georgia. It's absolutely different, but sometimes they don't understand us. I know why, because I remember my childhood. I remember my parents' generation. So I also was born in the Soviet time, and I also had a huge influence. So I was a Protestant, and in the beginning, so I was very young. I was a schoolboy when I started protesting the Soviet regime. But I also have and also had the influence from this. And this is a new generation, absolutely new, absolutely different. They were born here in an independent country, and they can't imagine what was happening, what is happening, and what was happening in the Soviet time, and what is happening now when they don't like this influence from the north, from the Kremlin, and their choice is their choice is clear. The freedom and nothing else. When you are young, you are radical, but it's understandable for me, because what can be more important than freedom, and they know it, and that's why they spent in last spring almost 3 months in the streets, in the main streets of Tbilisi, protesting the new so-called new Russian law. And I think that they will continue it, because this is this is not new choice for us. This is not new target. It's a very old story. We are a very small country, and on the crossroad, and so huge empires. It was Ottoman Empire, Persian Empire, or Russian Empire. We were attacked by them, but always, when we were even when we were the part of huge, very cool and strong empires, we never could forget, and never forget that there is a freedom, and we have to fight for this freedom and independence always, because this is the secret of surviving so small nation and country. And we did it, we have done it, we do it, and we will do it, especially the next generation. I'm absolutely sure that for them also will be more important than for the group of young people, as it happened in 1983. It was, yeah. Now it's different situation. Now the world is open. Now no limits, no isolation as it was when I was young, and the Soviet regime and Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. And for them, for new generations, so everything is clear. There are no doubts how to make a choice. Between freedom and the regime. So I see them as I think the most important thing that it helps us, and that the new generation, is education. So they are different generation with the better education, not only Soviet education, better education, and with the better situation to fight for their rights and the freedom generally.
Thank you so much. So we have another question from our follower, and
I thought I talked about everything.
Yeah, yes,
No problem. If there are more questions, I'm ready.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that a lot of questions are about the real events. So the readers are really interested in what happened in reality. So the question sounds like this: after the collapse of Soviet Union, did they investigate if the punishment was equal to the crime or not?
Of course they did not. Of course they did not. That's why the book has so many. This book has so many readers, because they did. Punishment was a very cruel, very cruel. So it was a crime to hijack. I can repeat it. It was a crime to hijack a plane, but the punishment from the government was very cruel, more cruel than their mistake. It was a mistake. What did they do? Young people hijacked the plane. But what did the government do? It was more cruel. The punishment was very cruel. They were very young for death. And that time it was death penalty in the Soviet Union. And that's why the only one, the Gega Krombakhidze's wife, she was very young, 19-year-old, and only she survived because she was a woman. So at that time in the Soviet Union, there was a different verdicts. Verdicts? Is it verdict? Yeah. For women and men. Yeah, that's right. And there was no death penalty for women, yeah, in the Soviet Union. So that's why.
Thank you. Thank you for the honest answer. And we have talked about a lot of things. We have answered to the questions of our followers. And now I just want to ask my own question. As you know, we want to continue this series of podcasts. And I have two questions. And that's all. Thank you for your time. The first question is that.
No problem. I'm ready for the questions, but I just arrived. I'm in the United States, and I just arrived. I don't remember. It happened yesterday or today because the ocean. Because of the ocean, I forget where I am, and maybe I'm sleeping now, and I see you in my dreams. I don't know. That's why I have time. But if you see that I'm sleeping, it's true. It's not a dream.
Yeah. It could be funny. So it's a very short question. So I just really wanted to know who is your favorite writer of all time, and what book do you recommend to the young generation? This is the first question. And second question would be can you suggest us an author that deserves even more attention in the English-speaking world for our next podcast, please? So your favorite all-time writer, book, and suggestion.
Okay, so if you mean general, you mean Georgian literature generally, or
yeah, when you were younger and you started to read books and you decided to be a writer, I'm sure that you had all the greatest writers you loved most. Maybe personally, I know that you are a big lover of Cervantes and Don Quixote, also Georgian writer Rustaveli. But please tell us a few words for our followers and listeners.
Good, very good question. Maybe you remember Frank Zappa said once that there are so many good books and life is so short. And it's because really there is a huge number of really very good books, and life is the only one. So to read all good books, we don't have time. If you mean the Georgian literature, of course, if you mean the contemporary Georgian literature, of course, for me, most important author and writer is Aka Morchiladze, because of many reasons. But first of all, we grew up together. We are schoolmates, and it was the same desk we had in the same class. So I remember how did we start reading books together. There was one book and we could read together, and it was Mark Twain, Hemingway, or by the way, American literature, and Cervantes. You mentioned it was later. Because of Cervantes, I decided to learn Spanish, and by the way, I translated Don Quixote for kids into Georgian, because I think this is, for me, the book number one. But also we have a very important book. This is the novel or poetry or music from 12th century. The most important person in the history of Georgian literature, Shota Rustaveli, because we have 3 or 4 English versions of this book, and this book is written in 12th century, and book is not only the novel and adventure, but also the philosophy and also the book about the human rights. It's strange, but it's true that in 12th century there was a Georgian writer, genius, I could say, who was writing about the female rights, about the equality, and so on and so on. So we have a new English version. The author of this translator is the poet herself. Coffin is her last name. Maybe for your program or project will be interesting to read and to think about Rustaveli, which for us, of course, he is the number one, but he is not well known as we prefer, as we wanted, because you know the problem number one is translation for Georgian literature. We have a very good translators from other languages into Georgian, but we don't have good translations from Georgian into other languages, because you must be a poet also, not only translator. You must know everything, you know, about literature, and so it's not easy to translate. Is a huge responsible, yeah, is the right word? Responsible.
Yeah.
Yes. So maybe we can talk about Rustaveli next time, because
Sure.
everyone knows, as Umberto was a brilliant writer, Italian writer. Everyone knows Umberto Eco, and once he wrote. Everyone knows Dante Alighieri. Everyone knows Miguel Cervantes Saavedra. Everyone knows Shakespeare in the world, but they don't know Shota Rustaveli from the 12th century, the writer before they were born, the author who wrote everything. They wrote later. Can you imagine what did he say?
Yeah.
Umberto Eco. So maybe a suggestion of Umberto Eco will help us and will help you with your project to talk about his book and about him in next program. I don't know,
Yeah.
in next meeting.
So it's a great suggestion. We will try our best, because it's a book that really need even more recognition. Of course, like as you mentioned, it's one of the best books ever written, like Cervantes, Shakespeare, Dante Alighieri, Wolfgang Goethe, and so on. So thank you, Dato, for being with us, for sharing your opinions, sharing your stories on this very interesting book. That was like our first try for this podcast. I'm sure that those people who have read your book, our friends from our bookish community, really like it. That's why they have sent us so many questions.
I'm ready. Anytime I'm ready. I'll answer all questions. Anytime you will decide to invite me again. Thanks so much.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think that it was a great conversation, and if you have anything to say, and we can finish it. Like, if you have anything to add, if you want.
I said that the writers and the authors, when they do write books, they don't think about the opinions of future readers. But of course, they write books for readers. Without readers, writers don't exist. So thanks so much, everyone who was joining us, who was listening and thinking about literature and reading. Because you know, in contemporary times, we say that we don't have enough time for books, but it's not true. We must have time for books, because nothing compares to the books and literature. Nothing can help us to be better personalities than books and literature. So thanks so much to every reader in the world. Because of them we exist, and because of them we write books. Thanks so much. I'm always ready, as I promised, and see you soon.
See you. Thank you one more time, Dato. Goodbye, everyone. It was our first episode. We will meet next time. Goodbye. Thank you.